acronym VBGADA? Well, I'm going to tell you that this acronym has a small error. Oh, hey there. I see you're back for another video. Well, your timing couldn't be any more perfect because I'm just about to make one. So let's get started. The topic for today's video is a very important regulation that everyone must know when they are doing their private pilot training. But it becomes even more important when you're doing your instrument rating because this regulation is specifically required for IFR operations. So let's take a look at it. Before that, let's take a look at another very important regulation. The regulation is 911171. This regulation says that unless otherwise mentioned, all viewers must like and subscribe to PropelAPilot channel and also hit the notification bell. Now, unless you want a PropelAPilot deviation, you should go and comply with this regulation. Coming back to 911171, this is the regulation that talks about VOR equipment check for IFR operations. If you remember, you were asked a lot of questions about airworthiness during your private pilot. Because airworthiness is something that cannot be excused. You have to fly an airworthy airplane. It's called airworthy because it is worthy of taking to the skies. It is worthy of flying in the air. This regulation has to be complied with if you are going to use VOR system under IFR. And that is what the paragraph A says. No person may operate a civil aircraft under IFR using VOR system of radio navigation unless the VOR equipment of that aircraft is maintained, checked and inspected under an approved procedure or has been operationally checked within preceding 30 days and was found to be within the limits of the permissible indicated bearing errors set forth in paragraph B or C of this section. Which means within the preceding 30 days, the VOR must be checked and you have to verify that as a PIC before you go flying under IFR. If you are not going to use the VOR, then this regulation does not apply because it is only when you are going to use VOR navigation under IFR that you have to ensure that it was checked within the past 30 days. So how was it checked? How can it be checked? And what do you verify? You might have heard this acronym VBGADA. Well, I'm going to tell you that this acronym has a small error somewhere in the middle of this video. As you know, if you watch the complete video, you'll be able to catch that bonus tip. So let's get started. The paragraph B mentions how you can check the VOR. There are different ways in which you can check the VOR. The first one is use at the airport of intended departure an FAA operated or approved test signal or a test signal radiated by a certificate and appropriately rated radio repair station or outside the United States, which we don't care. So what we have two options here. One is an FAA operated or approved test signal. What is that? That is a VOT. A VOT is VOR test facility, which is established at different airports, which can be used to verify if your VOR is working properly. A VOT emits a signal of 360 radian in all directions. So no matter where you are on the airport, if you tune into the VOT frequency and switch the OBS bearing to 360, it must indicate a from indication. If you continue reading, in the brackets, in the parenthesis, it says that the maximum permissible indicated bearing error is plus minus 4 degrees, which means if you put in 360 and it does not center the CDI, it should be able to center the CDI between 356 to 004, which is plus minus 4 of 360. How do we know if our airport has a VOT or not? Well, what we do is we go on to the chart supplement. Let's take a look at the chart supplement. I'm going to open a random chart supplement. Let's go to Northeast chart supplement. The Northeast chart supplement has the following states. I'm not going to read all of them, of course. What is important is you go to the table of contents and then in the section 4 of associated data, look for VOR receiver checkpoints and VOR test facilities. When you go to that page, you will find a list of all the possible VOR receiver checkpoints and VOR test facilities. We just talked about VOTs, right? It divides all the names and facilities based on the state. So for example, in Connecticut, there is Bradley International Airport, Bridgeport, Groton, Hartford. All of these airports have a VOT. A VOT at that airport means that you can go to that airport, you can go to Bradley International Airport and tune into 111.4, set the OBS to 360, and it should read from 360. Or if you put it to 180, it will indicate 2. It should center the CDI within 4 degrees of 360 or 180. That is how you check your VOR using a VOT. You can look for a VOT at your airport. If there is none, what do? Well, we have option number 2. We have paragraph B2 for that. What is it? Use at the airport of intended departure a point on the airport surface designated as a VOR system checkpoint by the administrator, or outside the US, which we don't care. The bracket says the maximum permissible error is plus or minus 4 degrees. So you will use a surface designated VOR system checkpoint. How do we find that out? Again, go back to the chart supplement. In the chart supplement, you have these VOR receiver checkpoints. What do you look for? Go to a particular VOR receiver checkpoint and see where the airport is, or where the facility is. Look at the frequency and look for a G. G means ground, or the surface designated VOR checkpoint. These are the checkpoints which are established at different airports. How do we use it? Let's take an example and understand how to use a ground receiver checkpoint. So this is Bangor International Airport. 114.8 BGR is the identifier. 153 is the radial or azimuth from facility in magnetic. 153 radial. Distance from the facility is 3.8. Where is the checkpoint? On run-up area runway 33. Let's go to Google Maps or use any satellite map to show you how to do it. So here is Bangor International Airport. They have only one runway, which makes it easy. Runway 33. Yes. So that's runway 33. If you look at the run-up area, it has a small marking which you don't see everywhere. This is the surface designated VOR checkpoint. What you would do is you take your aircraft, go to this point, establish around this point or on this point, it doesn't matter, and then tune into 114.8, identify the BGR VOR, put 153 in the OBS or the course. It should indicate 153 from BGR and center the CDI within 4 degrees of 153. So it should be able to center itself from 149 to 157. If the CDI is centered within this, your VOR is good to go. Alright, let's say your airport doesn't have a VOT nor a surface designated checkpoint like that. What do? If neither a test signal nor designated VOR checkpoint on the surface is available, use Airborne checkpoint. There are Airborne checkpoints. Now, the maximum permissible error is plus minus 6 degrees. How do we look for Airborne checkpoint? Again, in the chart supplement. The chart supplement has different checkpoints. What I'm doing is I'm looking for an A around here. There it is. A in the type check is Airborne. Kingston Sky Acres Airport has an Airborne checkpoint over intersection of taxiway and runway 1735. Again, we'll do it practically. Go to that airport and see how it will work. So let's go to Sky Acres Airport. Sky Acres Airport is an uncontrolled airport. It does not have a proper taxiway diagram from the FAA. So what I'm going to do is use a chart supplement. Now chart supplement has runway 1735. Let's look at the sectional chart. There's Sky Acres and we had the IGN Kingston VOR. 117.6, which looks like it's about here. So you can clearly see that this airport, Sky Acres, lies along 070. It's pretty easy in this case. So what we are going to do is, let's see, 117.6 and 070. So at Kingston, if you fly over Kingston at 2500, because that's the altitude given, if you fly at 2500 over Kingston, tune into 117.6 and then put your OBS to 070, it should center within 6 degrees because it's an airborne. And it says over here the maximum permissible error is plus or minus 6 degrees of 070. So 064 to 076. Anywhere in between this, if the CDI comes to center with a from indication, your VOR is working fine. Let's say you don't have an airborne checkpoint. Then what? We go to number 4. If no check signal or point is available, while in flight, select a VOR radial that lies along the centerline of an established VOR airway. Select a prominent ground point along the selected radial, preferably more than 20 nautical miles from the VOR ground facility, and maneuver the aircraft directly over the point at a reasonably low altitude. And note the VOR bearing indicated by the receiver when over the ground point. The maximum permissible variation between the published radial and indicated bearing is 6 degrees. That's a little tricky, and this is where most students that I randomly ask VOR checks cannot answer how to do this particular test, because frankly speaking, nobody actually takes the effort of teaching you guys how to do it specifically with examples, which is what my goal is, or has been whenever I was an instructor, ever since I've been an instructor, to make sure that I make practical learning a part of my training. Using examples is the best way to learn it. What you would do is, let's go to a sectional chat. Using the sectional chat, what we can do is we can zoom into any random place. Let's say we are around here, an airport in the middle of nowhere, and we do not have a VOR test signal, VOR ground point, VOR ground receiver point. We don't have airborne checkpoint. So what we will do is, we have a VOR near us. We have airways coming out. Let's say we were coming out of Sydney Airport, N23. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the different Victor Airways and seeing along the Victor Airways to see if there is a very prominent ground reference point where you can maneuver yourself visually and then tune into the Victor Airway. Let's see. If you take a look at Victor 273, Victor 273 is radial 159 from Hancock VOR, and go along the Victor Airway, you'll find that the Victor Airway goes along these bends. Now, these bends are very unique and easily identifiable in the air. What you would do is, you would fly visually, go to this particular part of the river, and then you tune into Hancock VOR 116.8, fly around this area. You know that Victor Airways is passing through this point. So you would go here, fly, tune into 159 on the OBS or the course. The VOR CDI must be centered or come to center within 6 degrees of 159. What you are doing is, you are using a Victor Airway which is already established on a particular radial. You are using a sectional chart to know where the Victor Airway flies over, and then you are going to that point, that area, because you know that this is where Victor Airway is coming at, and then you are using this as a reference to see if the VOR is working. Where the mistake that most students make is, they think that you will fly the Victor Airway and then test it. How can you fly the Victor Airway and test the VOR? Because to fly the Victor Airway, you would need the VOR. So you cannot use the VOR to test the VOR. You cannot use your aircraft's VOR receiver to test the aircraft's VOR receiver, unless you are doing a dual VOR check. What is that? Let's say we don't want to go through paragraph B, we go to paragraph C. Paragraph C states that if you have a dual VOR system, then you may check one system against the other in place of the paragraph B, in place of the procedures in paragraph B. How do you use it? This is the simplest one. What you do is, again, let's take an example of here. We are in and out of Sydney. You depart Sydney, get at a reasonable height. The maximum elevation figure is 3000. Tune into Hancock VOR anywhere you are, right? If you have two VOR systems, put both of them to 116.8. 116.8 will get you Hancock. Identify it using Morse code or the identifier in the G1000, and then center the CDI. Center the CDI at whatever radian. So let's say we are around Masonville. So it looks like it's where 360 radial is. VOR1 will come to center 360. VOR2 should also come to center 360. Unless you are moving too fast, you would have the same CDI indication on both of them. You are basically using one VOR receiver to check the other. What is the permissible error? Both of them should be within 4 of each other. So if VOR1 came to center at 360, your VOR2 should come to center at either 004 or 356. It should come to center within 4 of VOR1. That's it. This is one of the easiest ways to check a VOR. Just fly, tune into a VOR on both the VOR receivers, and then center the CDI. Both of them should come to center within 4 degrees of each other. That is it. Now the bonus of the acronym. Why the acronym is incorrect. The acronym is VBGADA. V stands for VOT, B is for bench, G is for ground, A is for airborne receiver point, which we talked about, D is for dual VOR, and another A is for airway. Now, most of these are discussed except for the bench. The problem with bench is a lot of people think bench is a test done by maintenance, which is correct, but the error of the permissible error of bench test is plus minus 0. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but I have heard this a million times, and I've tried to correct it whenever I can. Where is this coming from? Where we didn't even come across any bench or a maintenance test. Actually, we did. If you look at paragraph B1, you have an FA operated or approved test signal or a test signal that is radiated by a certificated or appropriately rated radio repair station. So if there is a radio repair station, you can take your VOR to this radio repair station. They can test the VOR for you for working for the accuracy. But to do that, their error, the permissible error, is still plus minus 4 and not plus minus 0. Scientifically speaking, there cannot be any instrument with 0 error. This is pure physics. There cannot be 0 error. Even atomic clocks have errors. Like, can you understand? Like, can you imagine how wrong saying plus minus 0 would be? Because scientifically and according to physics, there cannot be any instrument which has 0 error. There has to be an error. That's a part of basic science, pure science. So that was my bonus. So if you know this and if you see your friend not knowing bench test, then you can either make them watch my video, which you should, because you are a good friend and you want them to learn. Also, you can refer them to the regulation. One of the important things of becoming a pilot is knowing how to read the regulations, and unfortunately all of us try to take the shortcut and read the regulations using acronyms without actually going through the regulations one by one. Nobody ever told me that the bench test of plus minus 0 was wrong. I was also taught plus minus 0, but in instrument itself I took the effort of reading 91-171, and that gave me an extra edge as a student and as an instructor now, when I know that there is this error and I can teach it to my students. Once the VOR test is done, it has to be written down. You as a pilot can perform a VOR test, which we discussed how to do it, But how do we note? What are the things that we need to write down in order to make it airworthy? Each person making the VOR operational check shall enter the date, place, bearing error, and sign the aircraft log or the other record. If it is done by a repair station, then an entry must be made in the aircraft log or other record by the repair station certificate holder or certificate holder's representative, certifying to the bearing transmitted by the repair station for the check and date of transmission. So the note has to be made of when it was done, where was it done, who did it, and what was the error when you performed the VOR test. Alright guys, that's it for the video. I hope you learned something from it. And please like the video if you learned something from it. Subscribe to my channel for more such content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.